Друзья, я рад приветствовать вас на канале «Секреты большого тенниса». С вами Денис Семенихин. Сегодня мне предстоит пообщаться с девушкой по имени Эрин, которая отвечает за физподготовку теннисистов в университете Санта-Барбара Стейт. Я надеюсь, будет интересно. Поехали! What do you do here on this campus?
So here at UCSB, I am the strength and conditioning coach for the men's and women's tennis program.
Okay, so all the physical preparation that these tennis players go through is your responsibility.
Correct. So every year the tennis team comes in, I do a round of assessments on them. So just figuring out, what their, maybe movement patterns are and where they need to progress in those, and then just basic strength levels, vertical jump, broad jump, push-up, pull-ups, stuff like that.
If we talk about Russian viewers, people who love tennis, what would you recommend them in terms of assessment or exercises, movements? I mean, just, direct this conversation.
Right. So I think, first and foremost, it's always really important to get an overall movement screen done by a professional and somebody who can assess, where you're at physically and how your movement patterns are affecting your overall life, and not to mention your tennis game. So that's just making sure you move through a full range of motion through simple patterns that we do on an everyday basis, like squat, a push-up, a pull-up, and then you can get kind of down into some nitty-gritty stuff that's somebody in that profession would be able to help you a lot.
Okay, can we run through the quick assessment on my example?
Right.
Say if I'm the person who wants to play tennis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So if you just want to stand, feet shoulder width apart.
Yes.
Perfect. You can just put your hands out in front, and from there I just want you to move all the way through a full range of motion.
Hands like this.
Yep, just hands out in front. Just
feet pointing forward.
Yep, feet just pointing straight ahead, and I just want you to move through a full range of motion body weight squat. Beautiful. So this right off the top is going to give a general idea of your movement pattern. So I can see that your ankles might be a spot of weakness there, and that you might need to do some special ankle strengthening stuff, because we know that your ankles are going to affect your knees, are going to affect the rest of your body as well. So that's just kind of a quick target that we want to set you through there.
Okay, how did you determine that?
So as you squatted, I saw your ankles were kind of rolling in. You were unable to keep your full heel down.
Yeah, I would try to point them outwards.
Yeah, you can try pointing
if I do
your
squats,
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's easier
and then
a little bit.
Can place them on the ground. So a lot of times, which is why usually assessments are always done in a certain way, so that you can always find those quick hitters where your ankles, you may still be able to work out. It wouldn't be anything that's inhibiting you from playing tennis. It's just maybe something that we could work on so that you can play tennis for the rest of your life. And that's what's most important for tennis players in general. Is tennis is a lifelong game, and even though you may be trying to be a professional tennis player, or wherever you're at, a high school tennis player, wherever you're at, their longevity of tennis is what makes the game so popular and so great.
Okay. Then next.
So the next one we might do is just if you come down into a push-up position. Mm-hmm. And with that, we always instruct just to put the hands directly under the shoulder blades. Good. And then the main thing I'm going to watch here is to make sure that your core is going to stay engaged through a whole range of motion. So if you're perfect. Yep. So just watching from here to here, making sure that he's not breaking through the core, and able to keep his elbows in nice and tight, come all the way down through a full range of motion. Beautiful. And press back up. That looks great. So what I might see in a tennis player in particular that has played a lot of tennis, you're going to see that right shoulder, or whatever side their dominant shoulder is, dive and maybe do the majority of the work, whereas their left shoulder might not be doing as much work. And just watching overall the way their scaps move on their back is going to give you a good frame of reference for either how long they've been playing tennis, and if that's all they've primarily been doing and not working on a overall strengthening program.
Okay, then next, I'm memorizing right now. Okay, so you mean in my push-up there was no anything abnormal?
Right, you were able to, so that also is going to show just total overall core placement. So if you're able to go through a full range of motion push-up and not have that back arch, so many people now, because of just the way society is, have all kinds of back pain. right? So back pain's like the number one thing that I think probably doctors are making millions and millions of dollars off of, because everybody now has back pain. And that's because we sit so much more as a society. And everything that we do, all of our jobs now are sitting, video games and everything else that, you know, we grow up doing is just so different than, you know, maybe what they were doing before that. So just watching to make sure your core is able to stabilize while your upper body is truly doing all the work.
Okay, next movement.
So another movement, especially as a tennis player, that I would have someone do is just to do a lateral lunge. So if you are kind of widen out your feet, again, toes point straight ahead. Good, and then your arms again will just come out in front, and I just want you to sit all the way over to one side. Perfect, and then come back up. Good, and now go to the other side. Perfect, and come back up. Great, so what that's gonna show us again, see, again, your ankle, not to call you out on your ankle.
No, that's good, that's good.
Yeah, your ankles are maybe just a little stiff and tight, which is again, something that is pretty common, especially for, you know, someone who does exercise a lot like yourself, maybe just hasn't overall paid attention to an inhibiting factor such as an ankle, because you have such great movements otherwise and you are a strong individual. So sometimes coming back to something minor like an ankle could just keep the longevity of a game, if we're talking strictly tennis, to keep them playing the game longer, because your ankles are going to affect your balance, your stability, and your overall quickness to play, and that's what's going to keep you playing long term. That's just kind of a general, like if you were a first-time client of mine and coming in, and that might be something I just run you through just to overall see how you move and maybe what movement patterns you're lacking, or maybe just some muscle imbalances, like something like if your core would have dropped and you'd been unable to stabilize, I would know that, you know, that would probably be where we would start for you.
Okay, what would we start with me?
So right now I would say, yeah, just working on that full range of motion bodyweight squat while maintaining the good balance in the ankle. So we'd probably do a lot of stability work with you. So any upper body work that we would do, we would probably do it balancing, so that you have to maintain balance while going through like upper body curl to press or anything of that nature.
So standing on one foot?
Standing on one foot so that you
Just
learn to stabilize. So if you were going to do, let's say you're just going to do a single arm curl or single leg curl to press, so we'll go ahead and balance there on your left foot. Pull that right foot up. We always teach knee up, toe up, because that's how we sprint. Okay, and then from there,
so knee up, toe up.
Yep, because that's the way that we sprint, and that's where we what? See, we found a weakness.
Yeah.
So from here, let's say that you're doing curl to press, just overhead curl to press. So from there, and then you're going to maintain balance while working on a simple curl to press motion. Now we've added this in to help maybe work on your stabilization.
Oh yeah.
And that's going to work everything from your core all the way down to that ankle.
Yeah, but the most resistance, or not resistance, the most trouble I feel right here while doing this. You know what I mean? The most the most work is done there. It's not here.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
This is the toughest right now.
And sometimes, I mean, especially with a tennis player, we're not trying to create somebody who's very muscle bound and tight, because that's going to inhibit their tennis game long term, because the tennis is a whipping motion, just like the swing of a bat or the swing of a golf club. It's all going to start in our hips, and then it's going to go to our torso, then it's going to go to our arm, and then eventually it's going to go to the racket. So if anything in that chain is messed up or is not performing as we'd like it to, then your body is going to compensate for that. So a lot of times we see shoulder injuries or elbow injuries because maybe I don't rotate the way I should through my spine, or I'm not able to stabilize through my core, and now I'm getting that from my arm. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Erin, why? Yeah, absolutely, it does make sense. Why don't you give me the like selection of exercises, or like the spectrum of exercises that would help with all those potential problems? Like you showed me one for the ankles. So
right.
I can do it on both sides, and I can do different exercises, like let's say probably side lateral, something
right.
like that.
Yep.
Yeah? Besides presses.
Yeah, and so that's just kind of taking, you know, you're still going to get your upper body work in. So basically the main philosophy of everything that we do is movement first, and you're an athlete, and I want you to train like an athlete. So I'm going to basically always keep you on your feet. I'm not going to use a machine. I'm not going to use a leg press. I'm not going to, you know, we'll use some pulley machines and such like that, but most of the things that you're going to be doing is going to be you standing or lunging or pressing or something, not sitting down, not laying down, because we want you to be an athlete, and that's, you know, that's where you're going to perform and train and become a better tennis player. here.
Yeah, let's go through all those exercises.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
So the first thing, so squatting's a big part of our program, and you kind of already demonstrated a really nice squat. So, and there's a millions of ways that we can do squat, right? And so for the majority of the general public, and for a tennis player especially, we don't need you to have a 300-pound or a 300-kilo back squat. Yeah. Don't really care that much. The main thing for you is that you're able to move through a full range of motion. So what I would have you do is probably hold on to a kettlebell or a dumbbell, just right in the front.
Let's say kettlebell is here.
Yep. So it's we call this the goblet position, which is pretty standard across all nations. So with that, then from there you're going to just move all the way down through a full range of motion squat.
So what about my toes still? Can I point them outwards? Because I'm tall, it's very difficult for me to keep the weight on my heels.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so
either I have to go wide.
Yeah, sumo squat.
Yeah, then I can do this properly. And if it's like this, then I will go on my toes, you know, my knees will go.
Right, and so there's a number of things that you can do. You can elevate your heels a little bit just to help you move through a full range of motion.
What should I do?
But you can move your legs out a little bit for training purposes. But with that, you know, basics, the first thing that we want to do is establish a base with all of our athletes. So this was a great exercise, a goblet squat, moving through probably, you know, 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 12, just learning that movement and becoming really consistent in that movement, being able to keep the knees out as you stand up. That's going to ensure that your glutes are activating properly.
Yeah. So 3 sets of 10?
3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 12, and then as you progress into some heavier weights, you can bump the number down and maybe get a couple extra sets in there.
So with these guys, you don't do high reps, like 30, 50?
No, we never do high reps like that. That's the type of training that you're already getting on the tennis court, and we don't want them to come into the weight room and do exactly what they just did on the tennis court. So tennis, you know, you're always moving quickly, you're hitting a lot of reps. That's the game of tennis, right? Gotcha. So we want you to be able to create some strength and stability, and then be able to take that back out onto the court. So not going to have them exactly replicate what they just did on the court, because otherwise we're gonna increase all those overuse injuries that a tennis player already has.
Yeah, this makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, next. So another lower body exercise that I think most everybody can do in general fitness terms is just a lunge or a split squat. So if you come down to the ground, perfect. And from there, we just want to make sure that your knee is directly below your hip and that this knee is directly below your foot there. From there, you're just going to move up and down. So this is the shortest variation, the easiest variation of this movement.
Until my knee touches.
Yep. And then you can put a pad or something under your knee. You can do these exercises on the tennis court or in the gym. And there's a million variations that you can do from here. So from there, if you go from that split squats and then you come up to a balance position. So we're talking back about balance. So we're going from a split squat to a forward, good, and go right back into a split squat position, lunge position, perfect. And then you can go the opposite way and now step your foot forward.
Okay.
So you're coming forward, up to a balance, into a forward lunge, and then back up. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, so you
continue.
And then you can continue forward. So you can make that exercise has the broadest spectrum of exercise that you can do, because you can stay stationary with it. You can start to transition. You can add weight to that movement. You can vary the movement in millions of different ways, and that's kind of the point of, you know, tennis in general, is that, you know, you're going to be in a lot of different positions on the tennis court. So we're going to try to put you in a lot of different positions and work your muscles in different ways just by making small variations.
Yeah. What does this give you? Just balance?
Balance, just coming up into that. Yeah. So, you know, with a beginner who's maybe working on balance, you know, make a focus of that. For somebody who's, you know, progressing through, and let's say they're more of an elite level athlete, you know, starting to add more weight to that and starting to push a little bit more weight and having to focus.
In your hands.
Weight in your hands. You can put a weight on your back. You can put a weight vest on.
Okay.
We've loaded in millions of different ways.
What's the best in your opinion? In your hands, because this will tense the traps and so on. You know, make them kind of.
Right. I think overall for a tennis player, I think kettlebells are probably the best thing somebody could do.
So that will be here.
Yeah, you're not going to get hurt using kettlebells more than likely, and it's in general very safe way to practice.
Nice.
And yeah, that's one of we primarily use kettlebells. We do a little bit of barbell work, but primarily we're working a lot of.
What's the rep range for this one? for those?
Probably about the same. So as with the beginner, I would keep the reps higher, not going over 15 ever, staying more around 10. And then as they progress and start adding weight to the movement, then I would go more around 5 to 6.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So then we can get into some upper body movements. So push up, we kind of talked about that. I think it's also really important for us to be able to pull. Okay, so we, again, everything that we do is coming forward, right? So we're always playing tennis, we're coming forward so we're also getting our pecs very, very tight. And we're also folding everything forward. So we really want to strengthen those rhomboids and, just those lower trapezius that we can actually pull and hold yourself in that position.
Okay.
And so that we can strengthen those motions. Yeah.
Like we do the pulley with a pulley.
Yep. You could do rows with a pulley. You can do single arm rows. You can go bent over rows. You can do pull ups. You can do dumbbell rows.
You'll do it standing.
Yep.
Or just
yeah. You can go. I usually, never. Again, we want them always to never be like leaning over or putting their foot up. A lot of bodybuilder style might be more to like put your foot on the bench, where I'm going to want an athlete to engage and hold themselves, but most of the weight is being held in their core.
Okay.
And then let's say you kind of have your hand on a bench there, and then you're going to row in a good position. Just for balance. Yep. And then you're going to row completely loading good that scap. And that's just going to help open up. So again, just like we talked about the lunges or the split squats, rows have millions of variations, and it's about, picking what's right for the athlete. So somebody, it might be too much for them, or maybe they've had a shoulder injury and pull-ups are too much, but almost everybody can do a supine row. So laying on their back, rowing up to a bar, rolling up to a TRX strap, something of that sort.
Okay. TRX.
And again, weight,
so that means like there's TRX.
Yep. So you're going to be lying underneath and then pulling up to the sky.
Nice. Yeah.
You're saying you can do that single arm and double arm as well through all those movements. And that's, again, just a great way to, open yourself back up, because everything that we're doing is folding ourselves forward, really tightening our pecs.
So would you say that tennis players, especially the professionals, like these guys who play all the time, that they have the tendency for their shoulders to pull forward a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is that? Because of
because everything that they do is in that motion. So every motion is coming forward, and we're not ever opening up. So really, we might hit a backhand, but all of our power is coming forward. All we're doing is loading, coming back. So it's usually like a 2-to-1 ratio of pulling motions to pressing motions in the weight room. So again, we're trying to help out those imbalances so that their tennis career, again, is as long as they'd like it to be, and that that's the overall goal of everything that we do here, is to keep them playing the sport that they love for as long as they can.
Erin, so then I have a question. Since tennis is not symmetrical, obviously, you use one side, or even if you hit a backhand with two hands, still it's not symmetrical.
Right.
Would you do symmetrical exercises for them to even out the physique?
Yep, absolutely. So we always work both sides of that spectrum. So we're going to train, the right arm individually, the left arm individually, but I would never, just because you're right-handed, never would I ever only train your right side. So and you're gonna see, if you watch any tennis player that's, our big time players in the world right now, you're gonna see their forearms more developed, their biceps more developed on that dominant hand, but you would never train someone that way, because we want to help even them out and help them to become more symmetrical in their everyday life, so that they don't end up with a very bad shoulder problem.
Yeah, but from your experience, let's say if I do, let's say I'm a tennis player and I'm left-handed. If I do 10 reps with the left hand, with my left side, and then 10 reps with my right side, will that create symmetry, or will I have to do something really symmetrical, let's say with a TRX, and making sure, maybe even letting go one, when you have just one handle and the other one is just imitating and trying to keep it balanced. You know what I mean? How to recreate
so
the
you're
symmetry?
Always going to, if you've played tennis, let's say for even 1 year, and you've taken, let's say 1,000 reps on one side compared to let's say for you it's your left, you've taken 1,000 reps on your left and you've taken 0 reps on your right. Coming into the weight room and doing 3 sets of 10 is not going to solve your problem, but it is going to help your body recognize and strengthen through your core, which is going to keep you stronger in the long run anyways. But you're always going to let your weak side be your guide. You're never going to out-train your weak side. So does that make sense? So if you're doing single arm bench press and you can hit, let's say 100 kilos on your left side, but you can only do 80 kilos on your right side, you're never doing 100 kilos on your left side because you would never want to overtrain your weak arm.
So that means you're undertraining the strong arm and just training actively your weak
right,
side.
so your weak side's always going to be your guide. So if you, and that's kind of goes for all of activity, whether you have a hurt knee or you have a hurt shoulder, you're never going to overtrain your weak side.
Okay.
Or out-train your weak side.
Okay, next. What else?
So another thing that we are a power athlete, right? Working with tennis players. So a lot of what we'll do is, and I know we don't have a med ball out here today, but we can kind of talk through some of the med ball exercises that one might do in a weight room to benefit their tennis career. And so that's just really taking all the strength that they've built over a program. So let's say you started a phase and you've been at it for 6 to 8 weeks and you've really developed some baseline level strength to be able to now move into a little bit more like power motion. So there, anything from jumps to like, jumping clap push-ups to then working into some med ball work. And that just really, and actually the tennis players all love doing it because it's what they're most comfortable doing. So it's taking somewhat of a tennis motion and now adding a weighted med ball to that. So a lot of things that we do are like a throw. So
show me how.
So if I'm playing tennis, I'm used to being here. You're going to completely load, and then you throw that med ball into a wall.
Can we do it in pairs?
Yeah.
Like you had two tennis players, or it has to be a trainer and a tennis player?
You can do it however you want. Just obviously, if you'd want to make sure that they're aware of what's going to happen, because if you're throwing a 12 to 20 pound med ball, you want to be ready to catch that med ball. But so if we were partners here and we were throwing a med ball back and forth, we could do this. So this would just be a side lateral toss med ball throw. So from here we'd want to load the hips just like we do in tennis, and then the whole action is going to be led by the hips and then finish through with the arms. So you're going to load and explode through the hips.
Okay, then
you're going to catch.
Yeah,
then you're going to load through. Yep. And then you're going to take the ball back behind you and then throw,
and like
kind of creating that whipping motion. Using your
hips. With the hips. All right.
Yep.
So basically, the hips rotate first, then the body. Right.
Yeah, our hips are going to be the power of all powerful movements that we're going to do. So your hips are going to lead a lot of that. So when we jump, a lot of that power is coming from the hips. So we want to learn how to properly load the hips and then train that.
With this med ball throwing, how many reps? What's
never want to, distance, if somebody's doing it by themselves, putting them up against a wall, if you're doing it in a court, in an open field, you just want to make sure, that you're always picking the med ball up correctly. So it's not necessarily how far of a distance, it's just that you're then picking the med ball up correctly, because you don't want to go around picking up a 40-pound med ball and like bending over and hurting your back. So you always want to go pick up the med ball just like you pick up any weight, right? Yeah. But just a lot of times when you start adding balls and other elements to the equation, you kind of forget that you're training. So just always keeping training at the front of mind. So that's a great way, because everything that we do here, again, being led by the hips, but then turning through our T-spine and then finishing it with the arms. So that's a big movement that we do. Again, under 12, never going really over 12 reps, because again, we want to keep it more into a power movement. Absolutely. So even though you may be a left-handed tennis player, you're never going to only train because you only hit left. You're not going to only train. You're going to train both sides of the
What would you do? Would you do more on the weak side?
No, not necessarily. Your weak side is just always going to be your guide. So if you can do 12 good reps at, let's say, 20 pounds, or about,
on your weak side.
On your weak side, yep, or 8 kilos. Then you'll do the same on the other side, but you would never start with your strong side and then not be able to complete the exercise on your weak side.
Okay, then after.
So if you're going to do med ball throws, there's a number of jumps variations that you can do. So you can do just a standard body weight squat jump. So if you just come back, load your hips, and then jump up and then land in a good spot. So if you're going to come down, up, and then land back in a good spot. What that teaches someone to do as a trainer, I can watch you and make sure
like
that you are landing correctly. Like so then you're going to jump up and then land back in that good position. Right, so jump up, land back in a good position. Good, and again, that's kind of...
On the heels? on the
You're going to
toes?
land right about the midfoot. So you never want to be on your heels, right? Because we're athletes and we can't move from there.
Yeah.
And we never want to be so far up on our toes because, again, never going to be able to move from there. So we always want to train, although we're not doing, high rep movements, we always want to train the same way. That's why we would never lay down and do a leg press machine. There's always a time and a place for a leg press machine if you're injured or, whatever might have happened to you over your lifespan. But, if you are able to train standing, which if you're playing tennis, I would think we could all train standing. That's the way that we would train. So that's just a simple jump variation.
Can you show me the jumps one more time?
Yeah, so a jump squat, you're going to come down and jump up, and then you can start to pair those motions together.
Okay.
So the main thing with that is that when they land, you can see a lot of glute imbalances there. If my knees are diving in and I'm unable to keep my knees out, just kind of gives you, maybe then we could do some like clam exercises or some banded monster walks, or just kind of some of those simple targeted exercise to, really strengthen our glutes.
Okay.
So and then on top of that, now we're adding power.
How many reps?
To a strength. Same, you never, with that,
under
even
15.
Under 15, and even with that, like if you're going for max effort, with something like that, you never want to perform the exercise at a mediocre level. So if you're going to do jump squats and you can give me 5 good jump squats, let's say my overall rep range, I want you to do 20 jump squats. You can give me 5 good jump squats at a time. We're gonna go 4 sets of 5. That's gonna give me that overall number of 20. And I think that's a good way to think about training in general, is that if you have a certain rep range that you're looking to finish, let's say you wanna do 50 reps of squat, but you can only give me 5 good reps, then you're gonna do 10 sets of 5. And you're not gonna do 10 bad reps.
5
that
sets
are
of 10.
5 sets of 10 if you're unable to do that. And that's,
would you do this much, 50 reps of squats, like with any one of the tennis players?
Depending on where they're at in their
Usually
career, usually less than that. If they're a new athlete and they're they're not adding a lot of weight to that movement, if they're really just learning the movement, then absolutely. Then you're gonna, usually when you're just learning a movement, your reps are gonna be higher. When you're getting stronger and building strength through a movement, then you get into some of those lower reps. So we don't really train on the opposite end of that. We don't really go into single rep maxes either. Some professional tennis players might go into some of that type of training, but in general, especially with the collegiate athlete, usually not going into a single rep max for safety reasons. And again, we're here for them to be the best tennis player that they can be. I don't really care if they're the best weightlifter that they can be.
Yeah, I understand. But still, I'm wondering, let's say you told me that the majority of exercises is done standing up, because that's what tennis is about, standing up. Will they ever do bench press? They
will do bench press, but probably not barbell bench press. So we'll do dumbbell bench press, we'll do alternating bench press, because again, those are pointing out imbalances or muscle imbalances, are really just making them stabilize through their core. If you're laying on your back, so we're still adding that balance in there, right? That you're laying on your back and you're maybe only moving one arm at a time, because while that arm's up, I have to stabilize through my core and then press with my opposite arm. Whereas, if you're strict to a dumbbell bench press, and that's just a little bit more dangerous on the shoulder in general. And again, don't care that if they can bench 225, just want them to have a really hard tennis serve. So for most of them, it's more important that they just have that general strength through the shoulder, not that they're, as of course, especially with our men's team, everybody loves to do bench press. And so, you have to play favor to that a little bit as well, but getting them to understand the overall health of their shoulder is most important. You can kind of talk them off the wanting just to max out bench press.
Then a question about explosive strength. Obviously, when they serve, there's an explosive strength that you have to put everything into that serve, especially if they're like precise, if they can hit the target spot.
Yes.
And they want to serve faster, stronger. Will the pyramid training or the standard strength building methods work for tennis players?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's more of a general movement variation. So, as someone gets stronger through the basic ranges of motions, now you're going to see, maybe we would call it creativity, come into play, and those explosive, those power movements, whether it's with a med ball or whether it's with some jump training or plyometrics or anything of that sort. But first you have to establish that base strength And then once that base strength is, you have that base strength determined there, you can go in any direction with that. And that's where the strength and conditioning is so individual in that sense, because all these guys are going to train together, but they're all going to train differently. They might all be squatting, but each and every one of them is going to squat differently. Whether that means that they're doing a split squat, what we talked about earlier, or whether it's that they're doing a goblet squat or doing a barbell squat. The possibilities again are endless, but it's most important that they're doing what's right for their body, and they, everybody's got something a little bit different, whether it's a hip, a shoulder, they can't get their, arms through on a front squat, they're having some restrictions there. You just never want to sacrifice, position for a weighted movement. And
Yes,
I think,
I understand.
It's a little bit easier to talk a female into that than to, bring a guy down off of their, just wanting to train and lift heavy weights. But I think if you can understand the basis around why you're doing it, then it's a little bit easier for them to understand and just have that conversation with them about, what's going to make them the best tennis player. They start to really understand, and then they want to improve through those motions so they can either do the exercise that they wanted to do all along, and the buy-in with that has been really awesome.
Mm-hmm. All right. Erin, so thank you very much for this profound explanation of the training methods. I think in general, I see that we can be talking probably for 12 hours, but still I won't get to learn everything.
Game, set the net.